I came back to Dorset on a Monday. Overcast, of course. The kind of sky that never quite decides whether to rain or just loom. No one knew I was coming. Not my mother, not Elliot, not the neighbors who used to wave like we mattered. It was better that way. I hadn't seen the village in 9 months, but it felt longer, like the place had aged without me. Or maybe I had aged without it. My boots hit the same gravel path I used to run down barefoot as a girl, and for a moment it almost felt like the war was behind me, that I was just home quiet and visible, no headlines, no briefings, just back. But then I saw the sign, white wood nailed into the hedgerow. Simple font, for sale, by appointment only, and underneath in thin print, the Hollow Crest Estate. I stopped cold. The wind picked up, but I didn't move. It couldn't be right. It was probably a mistake, a neighboring property, or scam listing. But even from the road, I could see the silhouette of the gables, the crooked chimney, the oak tree leaning over the second-story balcony like it was still trying to listen in. It was our house, and legally, mine. I crossed the gate slower than I wanted. The latch still squeaked just like it used to. Paint peeling. Ivy thicker than I remembered. And then the door new locks. Polished brass. No key under the third stone anymore. Someone had erased the old codes, the little secrets we'd lived by. But they'd left the mail slot open. Inside, I saw brochures. Stacks of them. Exclusive heritage property. Prime countryside investment legacy. Charm meets modern potential. They'd photographed my bedroom, my grandfather's study, the garden I used to sleep beside in summer when I couldn't breathe indoors. Every corner turned into a selling point, every memory a line item, and at the bottom of the flyer, owner Ms. Sophia Whitmore. My name, typed in black ink, bold and confident, like I had signed off on all of it. But I hadn't. I hadn't sold anything. I drove straight to the solicitor's office, took every back road I could remember to avoid the pub, the market, the school. I didn't want to answer questions. Not yet. Not until I understood what had just happened. The receptionist looked up like she'd seen a ghost. I thought. She stopped herself, then stood. Miss Whitmore, Mr. Thorne is in a meeting, but I'll let him know. No need, I said. My voice came out too sharp, but I didn't care. I'm here for one thing. I want the sale documents for Hollow Crest. Now. She hesitated. We filed those under your authorization. She reached under the desk, pulled a folder, flipped it open like it was routine. Inside contracts, pages and pages of them, with my signature at the bottom. Except it wasn't mine. Close, clean, but off. The W curved wrong. The T crossed too hard. Whoever did it had studied me, but they weren't me. That night I parked on the cliff above the village. The wind off the channel cut through the windows, but I left them open. I needed the cold. I stared down at the rooftops, each one smaller than I remembered. Even the Hollow Crest looked like a toy from this far up. A place that had once held everything. Bloodlines, secrets, the weight of people I hadn't spoken to in years. And I thought this isn't some real estate dispute. This was personal, calculated. And the worst part? It came from inside. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. By morning I had names. The notary, the firm who handled the transfer. The private buyer they'd claimed was anonymous. I called one after another, and finally on the third call, a voice cracked. I was told the family approved it. Your brother handled the filings. He said you'd given verbal consent from overseas. Verbal consent. No email, no confirmation, just his word. Elliot's word. I stood at the edge of the driveway the next evening, looking at the house as the sun dipped behind the ridge. No lights on inside. The windows blacked out like the place was mourning itself. The house had never turned its back on me, but the people inside had. And this time they hadn't just shut the door. They'd sold the whole damn place and stamped my name on the papers to do it. I hadn't planned to see them yet. But when someone takes your name and signs it like a weapon, delays are luxuries you can't afford. I knocked on my parents' door just after 7. The same door I used to walk through every Christmas in uniform. Now I waited outside like a solicitor. My father opened it halfway, and that was already too much. Sophia. No hug. No smile. Just my name. A name he no longer had the right to use. "Is Elliot here?" I asked. He glanced back, then stepped aside without a word. The room looked the same. Same Persian rug, same fireplace no one ever lit. But the air felt different, stale, too clean, like it had been scrubbed of anything real. My mother sat at the piano pretending she didn't see me. She played the same 4 notes on repeat, soft, deliberate. Elliot was in the corner. Loafers, collar unbuttoned, phone in hand. He looked up, and that was when it hit me. He didn't look surprised. "I saw the listing," I said. No response. "I saw the documents. The sale. The signature that's supposed to be mine." Elliot gave a weak smile. "It was just timing. The trust needed liquidity. We didn't think you didn't think I'd..." "What?" Notice I took a step closer. "I'm not dead, Elliot, and I didn't give permission." He exhaled through his nose like I was being dramatic. "It's not that simple, Soph. The property was under family holding. You were listed as primary, yes, but the trustees had override authority in special circumstances. It's all legal." I turned to my father. "Did you know?" He didn't answer. He didn't even blink. My mother stopped playing. "You've been gone a long time. And that's your defense," I snapped. "You waited for me to disappear overseas, then sold the house behind my back with fake documents. And a forged power of attorney." Elliot raised a hand. "Let's not call it forged. The authority came through a temporary clause in the 2009 trust revision." I pulled a copy of the transfer from my coat pocket and tossed it onto the table. "You expect me to believe this?" I pointed at the signature. "That's not mine. You knew it wasn't mine. And yet somehow you signed off on it." His eyes darted just for a second. A flinch, not a fall. "That's how liars move fast, but not fast enough. I built that trust for grandfather's war archives," I said. "You sold it to a shell company registered in Luxembourg tied to Harrogate Development. Do you even know who they are?" Elliot looked away. "I know they paid market value." "You mean laundered value." The word hit the room like a slap. My mother stood, hands shaking. "We did what was best for the family." "For the name?" "No," I said coldly. "You did what was best for your own security. You gutted the legacy. You erased a generation of service because you thought no one would fight back." I reached into my bags again and laid out a second page clean stark with my real signature below. "This is the authorization from the Ministry of Defense that I signed a month ago. Compare the strokes, the pressure, the ink consistency." Elliot didn't touch it. He didn't have to. We both knew. The paper on the table was a lie dressed in my name. My father finally spoke. Just one sentence. "You've been gone too long to understand what this family needs." I stared at him. At the man who taught me how to hold a compass, how to map the constellations, how to recognize Morse code by sound alone. He couldn't even hold my gaze now, and that told me everything. I left without another word. Walked out the same door I'd once come through in a snowstorm, medals still warm from the ceremony. Now I had no medals, no uniform, just a folder full of betrayal, and a storm that hadn't even started yet. Back in my car, I stared at the documents again. Not just the forged signature, but the notary stamp, a local firm. And next to it, a strange clause. One I didn't remember existing in the original trust. It was dated 4 months ago, while I was still in Kharkiv. While mortars fell outside the safe house, and I was helping evacuate wounded civilians, they were redrafting clauses in back rooms. using my silence as permission, my absence as erasure. I sat there for a long time, engine off, headlights dimmed. I didn't cry, but I did something worse. I started to calculate, not out of rage, not even revenge, just clarity, because this wasn't about one house, or one name. It was about what else they'd touched, and who they thought would let it slide. The letter came in a brown envelope with no return address, just my name rank included, and a red stamp that bled through the paper like it was a shame to be carrying it. Notice of suspension, pending internal investigation. They didn't even call. Apparently someone had flagged encrypted transmissions from my terminal in Kiev messages, routed through a foreign VPN, pinging servers in Brussels and Almaty. Military-grade traffic. Signature verified. Contents classified. But I never sent them. Didn't matter. Someone had filed a preliminary report linking my credentials to a breach. Said I'd been compromised. Said I might have leaked troop positions or worse, sold them. No arrest. Not yet. Just an unspoken quarantine. The kind that bleeds through your phone lines and leaves you shadow banned from your own uniform. I sat in the silence of a small cafe in Salisbury, turning the letter over in my hands. I didn't drink my coffee. I didn't eat the toast. I just stared. Wondered how many months they'd been planning this. Wondered how many digital fingerprints had been fabricated to paint me out of my own life. When your own name turns against you, the silence is different. Heavier. Almost deliberate. I messaged the one person I hadn't spoken to since university. Amelia Price. She'd once called my family a constitutional facade. Wrote a brutal op-ed about the Whitmore Trust's cozy ties to parliamentary donors and backdoor charity laundering. My parents tried to sue her. She didn't flinch. I found her at a rooftop flat in Camden, books stacked everywhere, empty teacups balanced between declassified documents, and a single revolver taped beneath her writing desk. She didn't hug me. Just said I wondered how long it'd take before they came for you. Then she handed me a folder. Start here. Inside wireframes, transaction ledgers, email printouts, dates highlighted. One in particular, 2 weeks before the forged sale of the Hollow Crest. A transfer of $2.3 million from the Whitmore Trust into a shell charity registered in the Isle of Man. That charity funneled the funds to a consulting firm, on paper a logistics contractor for refugee resettlement. But Amelia had traced its staff, no LinkedIn profiles, no tax filings, no real address. A ghost firm. It's not just about your house, she said quietly. It's about where they're putting the money now, and why. She handed me a second page. This one was handwritten, older, yellowed at the corners. My breath caught. It was my grandfather's handwriting. Where did you get this? I asked. She lit a cigarette with a match as if that question bored her. An estate sale in Brighton. Someone didn't want it found. It was part of a letter coded. Every third word misspelled deliberate. At first glance, gibberish. But the cadence felt familiar. It was the way he used to teach me ciphers as a child. That night we stayed up decoding what little we had. Every entry in his old field book was dressed in metaphor. Cathedrals of mirrors meant surveillance centers. Silver seeds meant bribery operations. But one phrase repeated every few pages. The Hollow Crest was never a house. It was a lockbox. He hadn't been speaking symbolically. We went back the next day. The house was empty. The realtor had left a key box on the back gate for investors to inspect the interior. I bypassed it in under a minute. Inside, the walls felt colder. Maybe it was psychological. Maybe it wasn't. We searched for hours. Behind the fireplace, inside the attic beams, under the floorboards of the east study. It was Amelia who found the compartment beneath the stairs, tucked behind a false panel disguised as old plaster. Inside, a wooden case sealed in black wax. Her hands trembled as she handed it to me. I opened it. Inside, a leather-bound ledger marked with my grandfather's initials, wrapped in oilcloth. Pages brittle with age, but every line sharp. Not fiction. Not journal entries, ledgers, dates, names, transfers, meetings, code words, bank accounts tied to Swiss institutions, project codenames tied to post-war European economic policies, and some still active. He had kept records on everyone, politicians, diplomats, even his own children. And one column labeled Red Strings listed monthly payments routed from the Whitmore Trust to parliamentary advisory firms. Firms that had passed legislation aligning tax breaks for heritage conservation with increased discretionary oversight. It wasn't charity. It was laundering. The trust was a lever, a legal facade to reroute millions into lobbying contracts under the guise of cultural preservation. My family wasn't just laundering money. They were shaping government policy to protect it. We took photos of every page. Then I locked the ledger in Amelia's safe. "That's not enough," I said. She nodded. "We need a name, someone current, someone active." That night we went through more of my grandfather's belongings. One envelope stood out tucked into a hollowed-out book on Cold War counterintelligence. It contained a cassette tape labeled, "In case of Whitmore breach, 4/12/84. We played it. The voice was grainy male and terrified. "If you're hearing this, it means they've already activated the fallback. The trust is no longer safe. It's a weapon now, hidden in tax filings, hollowed into donations. They use our name like armor. If Parliament ever tries to regulate it, the files go missing. That's how they've kept it clean. That's how they'll keep Sophia out. Unless she finds this first." There was a pause, then a final line. "The war never ended. It just changed uniforms." We didn't speak for several minutes. Amelia finally whispered, "He built a dead man's switch. Your grandfather tried to stop them." "He couldn't, but he left a map." That night the wind outside screamed louder than the thoughts in my head. I couldn't sleep, not because I was afraid, but because for the first time I could see the scale. It wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about blueprint. The house was the vault. The trust was the laundering stream. The family. Just players on a stage grandfather built to contain the rot. But it had outgrown its architecture, and now it was mine to dismantle. We spread his letters across the floor, like pieces of a dead language postmarked from Morocco, East Berlin, Lisbon, Reykjavik. Some were written on onion-thin paper, others on stationery stolen from embassies. All addressed to no one, but all clearly meant for me. Grandfather had never trusted phones. He trusted silence and ink, and the secrets buried inside crooked grammar. I remembered the old drill's first letter of every line, then last, then invert vowels on prime-numbered lines. He used logic like a blade, precise, unforgiving. It wasn't encryption. It was a test of bloodline. It took us 7 hours to crack the first paragraph, and when we did, I felt the air change. They hide behind the donors, but they leave a pattern. The names are shells. The shells repeat. Same surnames, new first names, always posthumous. We stared at the list. Dozens of beneficiaries across 20 years, all deceased, all donors to the Whitmore Trust after their official time of death. The money flowed through their names, then vanished into political consultancies and tax shelters abroad. Every one of them a ghost on paper. But the money was very real. Amelia pulled up electoral donation records. We started cross-checking. 4 names matched advisors to the Minister of Defense, 2 to a former Justice Secretary. One had co-signed legislation protecting private heritage trusts from external audits. We weren't just looking at laundering. We were looking at structural contamination. I reached for the second envelope. He'd labeled it in Latin. Dentus draconis, dragon's teeth, inside an old microcassette. Faded, cracked along the spine. We played it through a converter. The tape hissed. Then a voice, British-clipped arrogant. "We keep the trust clean through turnover. Let the dead sign the checks. The rest is optics. You know how these fools worship legacy." We are the legacy. It was a private conversation, a brag, maybe even a confession, but the voice, it was familiar. I leaned in. Amelia stopped the tape. Rewound, slowed it down. Second pass. I froze. I know that voice, I whispered. Amelia looked at me. Who, I said his name. Lord Malcolm Ashcroft, sitting MP, head of the Oversight Committee for Ethics and Charitable Use of Funds, public crusader against financial impropriety, war hero, decorated statesman, and apparently neck-deep in ancestral fraud. I took a breath. Then I said the one thing I'd been holding back since I found my signature forged. It's time they knew who I am again. We compiled everything. Built a chain-forged legal filings, posthumous donors, shell recipients, political beneficiaries, even financial transfers to Ashcroft's advisory firms through layers of intermediaries. Every piece linked back to the trust. The estate was just the first domino. We knew this wouldn't hold in court yet. Too circumstantial. Too many legal veils. But public pressure media. That was a different battlefield. We needed more than evidence. We needed shock. Amelia had an idea. There was a gala in 3 days, an exclusive announcement event for the expansion of the Whitmore Trust's new National Heritage Campaign. Parliament members, private donors, international press. Elliot would be there smiling for cameras, riding on a legacy he helped counterfeit. Ashcroft was listed as keynote speaker. We had the ledger, we had the cipher, we had the voice. Now all we had to do was light the match. But before that, I did one last thing. I went to the old archive room beneath Hollow Crest, the part the estate planners never listed in brochures, a bunker carved in stone by my grandfather during the Cold War. I remembered how to get in. Behind the rusted filing cabinets, I found the last envelope, sealed with wax. No markings. Inside a note. If you find this, it means I failed. But maybe you won't. And taped beneath it, a copy of the will. The real will. One that transferred full ownership of the Hollow Crest and all related trust mechanisms not to Elliot, not to the board, but to me. Dated, signed, witnessed, buried, silenced, and now resurrected. They had taken everything, but they hadn't buried the truth deep enough. Not for a Whitmore, not for his granddaughter. The Whitmore Trust's gala didn't take place in a ballroom. It was in a converted cathedral on the outskirts of Westminster. Arched glass marble stage, camera cranes moving like predators above the crowd. Every guest wore a name tag, but everyone already knew who mattered. Elliot stood near the podium laughing into the air with donors he hadn't met until money changed hands. My mother floated between parliamentary aides like nothing had ever happened. And Lord Ashcroft polished practice-tucked speech notes into his coat as a public relations rep whispered into his ear. They didn't see me walk in. I didn't come dressed for war. Just black. Blouse, slacks, one envelope in my hand. No name badge, no smile. Amelia slipped me a nod from the press section. She'd secured the mic feed, the projection cue, and the backdoor connection to the live broadcast stream. At precisely 19 to 32, Elliot took the stage. Tonight, he began. We recommit to what the Whitmore Trust stands for: legacy, transparency, and the future of British heritage. I walked down the center aisle before he could finish the word transparency. At first, a few heads turned, then more. The murmurs came next. When I reached the edge of the stage, I didn't wait for an invitation. I climbed the steps. Elliot froze. Sophia. I turned to the audience. My name is Sophia Whitmore. I served 12 years as a Royal Air Force officer, until 3 weeks ago when I was suspended under fabricated charges. Ashcroft stood suddenly. Excuse me, this isn't the... You'll want to sit down, my lord. You're on the tape. Gasps. Cameras reoriented. I handed the envelope to the AV technician. Play it. The screen behind the stage flickered. A waveform appeared. Then the voice. We keep the trust clean through turnover. Let the dead sign the checks. The rest is optics. We are the legacy. Ashcroft paled. Whispers exploded across the floor like wildfire. I held up the second document. This is the original will of Charles Whitmore, my grandfather. It places full custodial rights of the Hollow Crest and the Whitmore Trust in my name. This document was buried intentionally by members of the board to facilitate illegal asset transfers. A slide clicked behind me. Images of forged signatures. Dates. Routing numbers. A name repeated again and again. Malcolm Ashcroft. A beneficiary. A gatekeeper. A fraud. Elliot stepped forward, voice cracking. You don't know what you're doing. This is slander. I didn't flinch. No, Elliot. It's evidence. What you've done isn't just betrayal, it's criminal. The beneficiaries you funneled money to are dead. The advisors you paid lobbied laws to protect your scheme. And your name is all over every wire transfer. Security moved towards the stage. Amelia intercepted them with a press badge and a threat to livestream the footage to 3 national newsrooms if they interfered. I turned back to the audience. You think this is a family matter? It's not. This is public fraud, political contamination, a laundering scheme built on dead men's reputations and silenced women's signatures. I looked at Ashcroft. You taught the world to clap for shadows. Tonight you get to watch them burn. Ashcroft opened his mouth to speak. Then the second tape played. If Parliament ever tries to regulate it, the files go missing. That's how they've kept it clean. That's how they'll keep Sophia out, unless she finds this first. A still image followed. The ledgers. Pages and pages of coded archives. Every transaction cross-referenced with legislation passed weeks later. The lights dimmed slightly. Silence deepened. Then one woman stood in the back. Then another. Then a third. Reporters stepped forward. Phones recording. Microphones live. Ashcroft sat down. Elliot lowered his gaze, and I finally exhaled. This wasn't revenge. It was exposure. And for the first time in years, it was mine to deliver. The freeze order hit at 6:42 a.m., not with a bang, but a string of cold system alerts. Bank accounts locked. Assets under review. Travel restrictions activated across the Whitmore board. By midday, Parliament had scheduled an emergency ethics hearing. The front pages led with one word, infiltrated. Elliot was nowhere to be found. His social feeds scrubbed his office sealed. My mother issued a statement calling the accusations deeply hurtful, then quietly resigned from every committee she chaired. My father, ever silent, took refuge behind the legal team he once hired to destroy whistleblowers. None of them called me, and I didn't need them to, because this wasn't about punishment. Not anymore. This was about inheritance. Not the house, not the name, the truth. The Hollow Crest stood quiet when I returned. No press, no police, just stone and shadow. My grandfather's cipher room still smelled like rusted ink and dry leather. I took one final walk through the halls. Then I signed the deed over. The house would no longer belong to the Whitmores. Not to their shame. Not even to me. It would be transformed into a public archive. The Charles Whitmore Institute for Cipher Preservation housing records on Cold War operations, declassified encryption, and civilian counterintelligence history. I wouldn't cut the ribbon. I wouldn't speak at the ceremony. I'd already said what mattered. And now I was finished here. Justice wasn't fire or fury. It was subtraction, removing the lie from the bloodline, silencing the rot not with revenge, but with replacement. No headlines followed her to the Highlands. Sophia Whitmore disappeared, not in shame but in choice. A new name on a rental agreement. A one-bedroom cottage with a leaky roof and a view of the sea no one ever photographs. No press, no salutes, just wind and quiet. In the village cafe, they thought she was an archivist, maybe widowed. She didn't correct them. There was nothing left to defend. She lit a fire that night, not for warmth, but for finality. Pages burned slowly. Commendation letters, court summonses, photocopies of evidence already in government hands. All except one thing. A letter. Handwritten addressed to Amelia. I didn't do this to be remembered. Some truths don't belong on monuments. Some victories don't need medals. Sometimes protecting what's right doesn't mean being seen. It means finally being able to look in the mirror and breathe. She sealed it. Walked to the post box. Let it go. Back at the cottage, she opened the window and let the night in unburdened, unnamed, and entirely her own. There were no goodbyes, no signature. Just one final act of reclamation's silence. What do you think about the above stories? If you were me, what would you do? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.